Welcome to Concrete Block, the podcast where we dive into the latest news and current events shaping our world. I'm your host, Walter. Today, we're taking a closer look at a developing story in the Middle East, where U.S. President Donald Trump has announced the formation of a board of peace aimed at achieving lasting peace in the Gaza Strip. The board, which Trump claims is the greatest and most prestigious board ever assembled, will bring together a group of nations to work towards rebuilding and demilitarizing the coastal region. The move is part of Trump's 20-point plan for a sweeping transformation of Gaza, which has been ravaged by 2 years of war between Israel and Hamas. According to reports, the board will include representatives from several countries, including Turkey and Qatar, which have been invited to join the effort. However, the Israeli government has expressed concerns about the composition of the board, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu criticizing the inclusion of countries that he believes are too close to Hamas. Despite these challenges, the Trump administration remains committed to achieving full demilitarization of the Gaza Strip. The U.S. has announced that it will not be putting boots on the ground in Gaza, but instead will lead from the rear, with an international stabilization force made up of soldiers from different nations set to follow at a later date. As the situation continues to unfold, we'll be keeping a close eye on developments and bringing you updates as more information becomes available. The success of the Board of Peace will depend on the ability of its members to work together towards a common goal, and it remains to be seen whether this ambitious initiative will ultimately achieve its objectives. We'll be right back with more of today's top news on Concrete Block. Welcome back to Concrete Block. We're diving into a complex and developing story from Uganda, where President Yoweri Museveni has been declared the winner of the country's presidential election. The Electoral Commission announced that Museveni received just under 72% of the vote, with his main challenger Bobi Wine receiving 24%. However, Wine has alleged mass fraud during the election and has called on supporters to protest. It's worth noting that the election was held under an internet blackout, which authorities said was necessary to prevent misinformation. This move has been criticized by many, who argue that it restricted access to information and hindered the ability of citizens to participate in the democratic process. Additionally, there have been reports of violent incidents and allegations of human rights abuses during the election period. Bobi Wine's whereabouts are currently unknown after he claimed to have escaped a raid by the military on his house. His family members are reportedly under house arrest. The situation is tense, and many are watching to see how events will unfold in the coming days. It's also important to consider the broader context of Museveni's rule, which has been marked by concerns over human rights and democratic freedoms. Despite these concerns, Museveni has maintained a level of support among some Ugandans who appreciate the relative stability his tenure has brought. However, others argue that this stability comes at a cost, with restrictions on free speech and assembly. As we continue to follow this story, it's essential to approach it with nuance and balance, recognizing the complexities and challenges faced by the people of Uganda. We'll be keeping a close eye on developments and providing updates as more information becomes available. Good afternoon, and welcome back to the Concrete Block. As we wrap up today's show, we're going to take a closer look at the developing situation in Venezuela. The country has been making headlines lately, with the U.S.-backed ousting of former leader Nicolás Maduro and the rise of interim leader Delcy Rodriguez. Now, Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado has been gaining international attention, particularly after being awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. She recently met with U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House, where she presented him with her Nobel medal. According to sources, the meeting was an attempt to win over the president's support for her cause. However, it's worth noting that President Trump has so far shown more interest in working with interim leader Rodriguez, citing her willingness to cooperate on issues like U.S. access to Venezuela's oil reserves. This has led some to speculate about the future of Venezuelan politics and the role that Ms. Machado will play in it. In a recent statement, Mrs. Machado expressed her commitment to bringing democracy to Venezuela, saying that the country is starting a true transition with the support of the U.S. and President Trump. She also emphasized that this transition will have an immense impact on the lives of all Venezuelans, as well as the region and the world. Meanwhile, Rodriguez has been making changes to the Venezuelan government, including the dismissal of Industry Minister Alvaro Saab, a close ally of Maduro. This move is seen as a key step towards consolidating power and paving the way for future elections. As the situation in Venezuela continues to unfold, it's clear that there are many complex factors at play. The U.S. has been actively involved in shaping the country's future, with President Trump playing a significant role in backing Rodriguez as interim leader. It's also worth noting that the Norwegian Nobel Committee has stated that its prizes cannot be transferred, so it remains to be seen what will happen to Ms. Machado's Nobel medal after she presented it to President Trump. In conclusion, the story of Venezuela's transition to democracy is still being written, with many players and interests involved. As always, we'll be keeping a close eye on developments and bringing you updates as more information becomes available. That's all for today's Concrete Block. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, stay informed.